After losing an arm to the Manatite Hydra, enduring the emotional turmoil of marrying Roxy, and raising his daughter Lucy with Sylphie, Rudius Greyrat now seeks stability. But peace is an illusion. His mother Zenith remains amnesiac, magical research pulls him in, and the shadows of past mistakes still linger. This volume marks the beginning of a new arc, likely to be adapted in Mushoku Tensei Season 3. Expect emotional growth, magical breakthroughs, and the first signs of future conflicts. This video contains full spoilers for Volume 13 of the light novel. If you're ready to dive deep into Rudius' world, let's begin. Chapter 1. Roxy's New Job. The morning light crept through the curtains, carrying with it the faint, tantalizing aroma of something warm and comforting. It stirred me from my slumber, wrapping my senses in a haze of drowsy delight. My eyes fluttered open, and there she was, a vision of serenity lying beside me. Roxy, my goddess, her cherubic face mere inches from mine, her soft breaths a gentle rhythm in the quiet room. Her blue hair framed her delicate features, and the faintest hint of a smile played on her lips as she slept. For a moment, I was struck with awe. Here was a being of such grace and wisdom, sharing my bed, my life. I rose carefully, not wanting to disturb her, and offered a silent prayer of gratitude. She was more than a teacher, more than a companion. She was my guiding light, my muse. But as the blanket slipped slightly, revealing more of her slender form, I couldn't help but marvel at her presence. Her youthful appearance belied the depth of her knowledge and the strength of her spirit. A faint mark on her chest caught my eye, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if it was a divine symbol, a sign of her otherworldly nature. But no, it was something far more human, far more intimate. The temptation to reach out, to touch her, was overwhelming. Yet, I hesitated. Was it right to disturb her while she rested? Would such an act be sacrilegious? My thoughts swirled in a storm of desire and reverence, but before I could act, she stirred. Her hand reached for the blanket, pulling it back over herself, and she turned away, exposing the nape of her neck. The sight of it, marked by the faint traces of our shared passion, filled me with a sense of pride and wonder. "Roxy," I whispered softly, gently rousing her. Her eyes fluttered open, fogged with sleep, and she sat up, the blanket slipping away to reveal her bare back. The morning light bathed her in a soft glow, and I felt as though I were witnessing the dawn of a new era. She turned to face me, her expression still drowsy, and I couldn't help but admire her. Her body, though slender and lacking the curves one might expect, was a masterpiece in its own right. The faint marks on her chest, her delicate belly button, and the hint of her undergarments all seemed to radiate a kind of sacred beauty. But as she noticed my gaze, she quickly pulled the blanket back up, shielding herself from my view. The room seemed to dim as she hid herself, and I felt a pang of loss. But her dry remark brought me back to reality. "Is there a reason you look so dejected?" she asked, her tone laced with amusement. I chuckled, shaking off the melodrama. "It's nothing. I just wanted to bask in your radiance a little longer." She rolled her eyes but relented, allowing me a brief moment to admire her before covering herself once more. The playful banter continued, but the morning was slipping away, and we both knew it was time to start the day. As we dressed, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us here. Roxy, once my teacher, was now my wife. Her decision to take on a role at the University of Magic was a testament to her dedication and her desire to contribute to the world in her own way. I admired her for it, even if it meant she would no longer be by my side every moment of the day. But life had a way of balancing itself out. Just as Roxy was embarking on a new chapter, I found myself gifted with a new beginning as well. Zenoba, ever the ingenious inventor, had presented me with a prototype prosthetic hand, a marvel of magic and craftsmanship. Though crude in appearance, it moved with surprising precision, and I could even feel through it, albeit faintly. It was a reminder that even in loss, there was potential for growth and renewal. As we left Sonoba's laboratory, Roxy by my side, I felt a sense of contentment. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Roxy as my partner and the support of my friends, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, we would navigate this new chapter of our lives, embracing the changes and cherishing the moments of joy along the way. And so, hand in hand, one flesh, one clay, we stepped into the future, ready to write the next chapter of our story. Roxy's career shift reshapes her dynamic with Rudius, balancing love and independence. The prosthetic hints at future innovations. Could it evolve into a weapon? Also note Roxy's lingering insecurity about her worth beyond magic. This vulnerability might resurface. Chapter 2, Year 3. The dawn of my third year at the University of Magic arrived, bringing with it the familiar rhythm of life. As I descended into the living room, I found Sophie there, cradling Lucy in her arms. The soft glow of morning light bathed them both, and for a moment, I was struck by how radiant Sophie looked. Motherhood had added a new layer of grace to her, a quiet strength that seemed to emanate from her very being. Lucy, our daughter, was the picture of health, her tiny hands clutching at Sophie as she nursed. She was a quiet child, rarely crying, which had initially worried me, but Sophie assured me she was fine and I trusted her judgment. After all, Lucy was growing steadily, her little body sturdy and strong. The thought of reincarnation had crossed my mind more than once. What if Lucy was someone reborn carrying memories of a past life? It was a strange, unsettling idea, but I quickly dismissed it. Even if she were, it didn't matter. She was my daughter, and I would love and care for her no matter what. Paul had done the same for me, and I owed it to him to do the same for Lucy. The morning unfolded as it usually did. Aisha and Lilia prepared breakfast, the familiar scent of warm bread and soup filling the air. Zenith, my mother, joined us, her presence a quiet reminder of the changes our family had endured. Her memories were still lost, but she seemed to find comfort in Norn, her youngest daughter. It was a small but significant step, and I held on to the hope that one day she might remember us all. After breakfast, Sophie and I made our way to the university. The campus buzzed with the energy of a new term, students greeting me with a mix of respect and curiosity. Linnea and Persena, ever the lively duo, approached with their usual bravado, teasing me about my harem and their own lack of romantic prospects. Sophie handled their banter with grace, her confidence shining through. Roxy, on the other hand, seemed a bit flustered by their attention, but she quickly regained her composure. It was clear that the dynamics between us were still evolving, but there was no hostility, only a shared understanding that we were all trying to make this work. The day's classes began, and I found myself back in the familiar setting of the special classroom. Zenoba, Cliff, and the others were there, their presence a comforting constant. Roxy, now an assistant professor, joined us. Her introduction met with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Cliff, ever the devout follower of the Millie's church, couldn't resist the lecture on the sanctity of marriage, but even he eventually relented, offering his grudging congratulations. It was a reminder that, despite our differences, we were all part of the same community, bound by shared experiences and mutual respect. As the day wound down, I found myself reflecting on the changes that had shaped our lives. Lucy the rival, Roxy's new role, and the ever-present challenges of balancing family and academia. It was a lot to navigate, but I was determined to make it work. Sophie's unwavering support, Roxy's quiet strength, and the bonds I shared with my friends and family gave me the confidence to face whatever lay ahead. That evening, as I lay in bed with Sophie, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life was far from perfect, but it was ours, and we were building it together. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it as a family. The juxtaposition of mundane joy and Zenith's fragmented memories tugs at the heartstrings. Sylphie's maturity contrasts with Roxy's self-doubt. Subtle character growth that foreshadows their roles in future conflicts. Chapter 3. Praying with Norn. The crisp morning air carried the faint scent of melting snow as I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb Sylphie. Her peaceful face, framed by strands of golden hair, was a sight that never failed to warm my heart. She murmured something in her sleep, her hand reaching out as if to hold on to me, but I gently disentangled myself, leaving her to rest. After dressing in the training wear she had picked out for me, a simple, lined outfit that was surprisingly comfortable, I grabbed the stone sword I had crafted with my earth magic. It was heavy and crude, but it served its purpose well, helping me build strength in my artificial left hand. Norn was already awake when I knocked on her door, though she was still in the process of getting dressed. I apologized quickly and stepped back, giving her privacy. My little sister was growing up, and while her body was still slender and undeveloped, I couldn't help but feel a pang of protectiveness. She was my responsibility now, and I was determined to guide her as best I could. After a moment, she emerged in her exercise clothes, wooden sword in hand, her expression serious and determined. We began our training in the yard, the cold air biting at our skin as we ran through our usual routine. Norn had been training with me for months now, building her stamina and strength through repetitive drills. Today, however, I decided it was time to take things a step further. I explained to her that swordplay wasn't just about swinging a blade. It was about discipline, precision, and the willingness to endure pain. I warned her that the training would be harsh, that she might come to resent me for it, but she nodded firmly, her resolve unwavering. The session was grueling. I pushed her harder than ever before, correcting her stance, her footwork, and her strikes. When it came time to spar, I didn't hold back, landing blows that left her wincing, but determined to keep going. By the end, she was exhausted, her arms and legs bruised, but she hadn't given up. I felt a swell of pride for her resilience, even as guilt gnawed at me for being so harsh. As we finished, I noticed a group of students watching us from a distance. They had been there for some time, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. When Norn left to change, I approached them, curious about their intentions. To my surprise, they accused me of bullying her, their voices filled with indignation. It took some explaining, but I eventually made them understand that this was Norn's choice, that she was training to protect herself in a world that could be unforgiving. The group, it turned out, was Norn's unofficial fan club, a collection of students who admired her determination and spirit. They meant well, but their lack of organization worried me. Without clear rules, their admiration could easily turn into something more dangerous. So, I took it upon myself to establish some guidelines, ensuring that their support remained respectful and harmless. By the time Norn returned, the situation had been resolved, though she seemed a bit flustered by the attention. As we walked home together, I couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. Norn was growing stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. She had a long way to go, but I believed in her, and as her brother, I would do whatever it took to keep her safe, even if it meant being the villain in her story for a little while. Norn's journey from timid girl to determined warrior begins here. Her fan club's protectiveness might evolve into a faction supporting her later or cause unintended drama. Rudy's harsh methods mirror Paul's parenting, showing how cycles repeat. Chapter 4. Can I keep him? The days passed quietly in the Grey-Red household, each one marked by the steady rhythm of life. Aisha, ever the bright and energetic presence, continued to bring a sense of cheer to the home. Despite the tragedies that had befallen our family, she remained unshaken, her spirit undimmed. She tended to her garden with care, her hands working the soil as if it were a canvas, and her room was a testament to her meticulous nature, neat, orderly, and filled with the vibrant life of potted plants. Among them, one particular plant stood out, not for its beauty, but for its peculiar behavior. It was a small, unassuming thing, no taller than a hand's length, with delicate leaves and thin tendrils that seemed to move of their own accord. Aisha had discovered its strange nature shortly after my return from my journey. At first, it had been just another seedling, but over time it began to twitch and riot, responding to sunlight and touch as if it were alive. It was a treant, though unlike any I had ever seen. Tiny, almost harmless, and oddly endearing. Aisha, of course, had grown attached to it, treating it like a pet rather than a monster. When I first learned of its existence, my instinct was to destroy it. Treants were dangerous creatures, after all, known for their deceptive appearances and sudden, violent attacks. But Aisha pleaded with me, her eyes wide and earnest, insisting that the little treant, whom she had named Bite, was harmless and loyal. She even demonstrated how it responded to her commands, its tendrils curling around her fingers with a surprising gentleness. It was hard to deny her affection for the creature, and harder still to ignore the fact that it seemed genuinely tame. Roxy, ever the voice of reason, supported Aisha's case. She explained that treants could indeed be domesticated, especially when raised from a young age. The Mayor tribe, she told me, used them to protect their fields from pests. With her reassurance, I reluctantly agreed to let Aisha keep Bite, though not without laying down strict rules. If it ever showed signs of aggression, it would be removed immediately. Aisha, ever the responsible one, accepted these terms without hesitation, and so Bite became a part of our household, a curious addition to her already unconventional family. Aisha doted on it, training it with patience and care, while the rest of us watched with a mix of amusement and caution. It was a strange little creature, but in its own way, it seemed to fit right in. Life, after all, was full of surprises, and Bite was just one more reminder that even in a world of magic and monsters, there was always room for something unexpected. Bite's introduction isn't just comic relief, it ties Roxy's heritage into the family's daily life. Could this plant layer save them? Also, Aisha's nurturing side contrasts with her usual mischief, hinting at hidden debts. Chapter 5. Paternal Dignity. The summer sun blazed overhead, casting a golden glow over the Grey Rat household. Time had slipped by unnoticed, and now the world was alive with the warmth of the season. My days were filled with the simple joys of fatherhood, as I spent countless hours doting on my daughter Lucy. Her cherubic face and infectious laughter were a constant source of joy, and I found myself utterly captivated by her presence. Yet, as much as I adored her, I knew I had to maintain a sense of dignity and authority as the head of the household. A father, after all, should be a figure of respect and guidance, not just a doting fool. Hull had been my model of fatherhood, flawed yet deeply loving. He had his shortcomings, but he had always been there for us, even when it wasn't easy. I wanted to emulate that, to be a father who was both caring and strong, someone my children could look up to. But as I sat in Lucy's room, rocking her gently in my arms and making silly faces to elicit her laughter, I couldn't help but feel a pang of self-doubt. Was I too soft? Too indulgent? The line between being a loving father and a pushover was a fine one, and I wasn't entirely sure where I stood. Suzanne, Lucy's wet nurse and old friend from my adventuring days, often teased me about my over-the-top affection for my daughter. She had seen me at my lowest, back when I was a lost and broken young man, and now she watched as I fumbled through the early stages of fatherhood. Her presence was a comforting reminder of how far I'd come, but it also highlighted how much I still had to learn. Zenith, my mother, had also become a regular presence in Lucy's life. Though her memories were still lost, she seemed to find solace in caring for her granddaughter. Her quiet, gentle demeanor was a stark contrast to the vibrant woman she had once been, but there were moments, fleeting and subtle, when I caught glimpses of her old self. She would sit by Lucy's cradle, her eyes soft with affection, and for a moment it felt like she was truly present. Those moments gave me hope that she might one day recover, even if only partially. As the days passed, I continued to balance my roles as a father, husband, and scholar. My research into the magic, absorbing stones I had brought back from the Beggarit continent, was progressing steadily. These stones, remnants of the Manatite Hydra we had fought, held immense potential. They could nullify magic, a power that could be both a blessing and a curse. I was determined to understand their mechanics and find a way to incorporate them into my prosthetic hand, turning it into a tool of both defense and utility. Sonoba, ever the enthusiastic inventor, had been making strides in his own research. Together, we were unraveling the secrets of the automaton we had discovered, piece by piece. The intricate magic circles etched into its core were a puzzle of unparalleled complexity, but Zenoba's determination was unwavering. His passion for creation was infectious, and I found myself drawn deeper into the world of magical engineering. Amidst all this, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to grow stronger. The world was full of dangers, and I had a family to protect. My encounter with the Hydra had been a stark reminder of my limitations. I couldn't afford to be complacent. I needed to push myself further, to master new spells and refine my skills. Roxy, my ever-patient teacher, had offered to teach me king-tier water magic, and I was eager to take her up on the offer. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of respite. Life was a delicate balance of responsibilities and joys, and I was determined to savor every moment. Lucy's laughter, Zenith's quiet presence, the camaraderie of my friends, these were the things that made it all worthwhile. I might not have all the answers, but I was learning, growing, and doing my best to be the father, husband, and man my family needed. And for now, that was enough. Zenith's subtle progress is a knife twist. Will she fully recover? Or is this tragedy's calm before the storm? Rudius's fear of failing as a father mirrors his insecurities in past lives, a theme that'll haunt him. Chapter 6. A Water King is Born. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the University of Magic. In a quiet corner of the campus, a scene unfolded that might have seemed scandalous to an outsider. Rudius Greyrat, the infamous delinquent of the university, was pleading with a blue-haired girl, his voice filled with desperation. The girl, Roxy, was clearly uncomfortable. Her face flushed as she tried to pull away. To the casual observer, it looked like a case of harassment, but the truth was far more innocent and far more significant. Rudius was begging Roxy to teach him a king-tier water spell, a request she was hesitant to fulfill. Despite her initial reluctance, Roxy eventually gave in, agreeing to teach him the spell known as Lightning Storm. The three of them, Rudius, Roxy, and Sylphie, ventured out of the city to a secluded area where they could practice without risking harm to others. The spell was nothing short of awe-inspiring. Roxy demonstrated it first, summoning a massive storm cloud that compressed into a single devastating bolt of lightning. The sheer power of the spell left Rudius and Sylphie speechless. When it was Rudius's turn, he managed to replicate the spell on his first attempt, a feat that left even Roxy impressed. Sylphie, though she struggled, showed promise and determination, vowing to master the spell in time. As they rode back home, the three of them reflected on their journey. Roxy admitted that she sometimes wondered if her current happiness was just a dream, a fleeting illusion before the end. Sylphie, in turn, shared her own story, revealing how Rudius's teachings had saved her life and shaped her destiny. The bond between them, though unconventional, was undeniable. They were a family, bound by love, respect, and shared experiences. By the end of the day, Rudius had not only mastered a king-tier spell, but had also gained a deeper appreciation for the people who had shaped his life. The road ahead was still long, but with Roxy and Sylphie by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The legend of the boss continued to grow, not just for his magical prowess, but for the strength of the bonds he had forged along the way. Rudius' magical prowess cements his boss legend, but Sophie's struggle humanizes her. This disparity might strain their relationship or motivate her to seek power elsewhere. Chapter 7: The Wedding Ceremony. The night had been long, and the weight of the day's events pressed heavily on Rudius' shoulders. He had planned to sleep alone, a rare moment of solitude after becoming the Water King. Roxy and Sophie, his beloved companions, were exhausted, their energy spent from the day's trials. It didn't feel right to impose on them, and so he decided to retreat to his own room, seeking rest without distraction. Yet, as he prepared to settle into the quiet of the night, Aisha, his younger sister, appeared at his door with a request that was both familiar and unexpected. Aisha had often sought comfort in his presence, and tonight was no different. She asked to sleep beside him, a request he granted without hesitation. There was no ulterior motive, no hidden desire, just the simple need for closeness. But as Aisha celebrated her small victory, Rudius noticed Norn, his other sister, watching with a flicker of envy in her eyes. Norn, who had always been more reserved, surprised him by accepting his casual offer to join them. And so, Rudius found himself lying between his two sisters, their heads resting on his outstretched arms, their soft snores filling the room. In that moment, a strange sense of completeness washed over him. It was as if a missing piece of his soul had been found. The warmth of their presence, the trust they placed in him, stirred something deep within. Yet, as his mind wandered, it drifted to thoughts of Roxy and Sophie, and the tantalizing idea of sharing a night with both of them. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, a whisper of temptation that he quickly pushed aside. He loved them both deeply, but the risk of disrupting their delicate balance was too great. For now, he would cherish what he had, even as the seed of desire lingered in the back of his mind. The next morning, Rudius made his way to Cliff's laboratory. Cliff, ever the diligent researcher, was busy preparing for his upcoming wedding to Ellen Elise. The two had been through much together, and their union was a testament to their enduring bond. Ellen Elise, ever the picture of grace and mischief, lounged by the window, her thoughts seemingly far away. As Rudius engaged her in conversation, she revealed her own frustrations. Cliff's busy schedule had left little time for intimacy, and she longed for the passion they once shared. Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Ellen Elise broached the topic of Rudius's relationship with Roxy and Sophie. With a sly grin, she suggested the possibility of a threesome, a notion that both intrigued and alarmed him. Ellen Elise, ever the provocateur, offered to help pave the way, planting the idea in the minds of his wives. Rudius, torn between curiosity and caution, found himself agreeing to her terms, though he knew the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. The wedding day arrived, and the grandeur of the Millis Church in Sharia provided a fitting backdrop for the union of Cliff and Ellen Elise. The ceremony was solemn and beautiful, a celebration of love and commitment. Rudius stood among the guests, flanked by Sophie and Roxy, his heart swelling with pride and affection. As the vows were exchanged, he couldn't help but reflect on his own relationships, the love he shared with his wives, and the unspoken desires that lingered beneath the surface. The ceremony concluded with a radiant burst of light, a symbol of the divine blessing bestowed upon the newlyweds. As the guests filed out of the church, Rudius found himself caught in a moment of quiet reflection. The day had been a reminder of the bonds that tied them all together, the love that sustained them through trials and triumphs. And yet, as he looked at Sophie and Roxy, the thought of exploring new depths of intimacy with them both remained a tantalizing possibility that he could neither fully embrace nor entirely dismiss. Ellen Elise's proposal isn't just fan service, it tests the wives' boundaries. Sophie's later acceptance of Roxy hints at her emotional growth. But how will this taboo dynamic affect their family? As the sun set on the day, Rudius walked alongside his family. the weight of his thoughts balanced by the warmth of their presence. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. He was surrounded by love, and that was enough. Chapter 8: A Lucky Man. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of ripe harvests as Rudius Greyrat strolled through the bustling streets of Sharia, flanked by his two beloved wives, Sylphie and Roxy. The city was alive with the energy of the harvest season. Merchants hawking their wares, adventurers bartering for supplies, and students weaving through the crowds. The trio's mission for the day was twofold: to find the perfect birthday presents for Rudius's younger sisters, Norn and Aisha, and to set the stage for a night that Rudius had been eagerly anticipating. The day began in the workshop district, a labyrinth of stalls and shops filled with magical trinkets and experimental gadgets. Roxy, ever the curious mage, browsed through the items with a keen eye, though she doubted they'd find anything suitable for the girls. Rudius, however, had an ulterior motive. While he pretended to focus on the task at hand, his true goal was to find a gift for Roxy herself, a belated wedding present to celebrate their union. He watched her carefully, noting her fleeting interest in a magician's hat, though she quickly dismissed it upon seeing the price. Rudius made a mental note to return for it later. As the day progressed, they moved to the commerce district, where Sylphie led them to her favorite upscale clothing store. The shop was a far cry from the modest attire Roxy was accustomed to, but Rudius insisted they explore it. After much deliberation, they settled on a vibrant coat for Norn and a pair of flower-patterned boots for Aisha. Rudius also secretly purchased the magician's hat Roxy had admired, planning to surprise her at the upcoming birthday celebration. With their shopping complete, the trio made their way to the lodging district, where adventurers gathered to trade stories and sell their spoils. The atmosphere was lively, and Rudius couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he walked arm in arm with Sylphie and Roxy. The sight of his wives clinging to him filled him with a peculiar joy, a stark contrast to the loneliness of his past life. Yet, his mind soon drifted to the evening's true purpose, a naive intimacy with both Sylphie and Roxy, a fantasy he had long harbored but never dared to pursue. Elena Lise, ever the schemer, had planted the seeds for this moment, subtly preparing both women for the idea. Rudius had carefully orchestrated the day to lead them to an inn renowned for its discretion and comfort. As they approached the establishment, Sylphie and Roxy exchanged knowing glances, their cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anticipation. Rudius, ever the charmer, reassured them, though his own heart raced with excitement. The evening began with a lavish dinner at the inn's restaurant. The table was laden with delicacies, fresh salads, spicy soups, and succulent steaks, all accompanied by a fine bottle of liquor. Sylphie, ever the doting mother, abstained from the alcohol, her thoughts lingering on their daughter, Lucy, who had been entrusted to Lilia for the night. Roxy, on the other hand, indulged in the sweet dessert, her eyes lighting up with childlike delight as she savored each bite. Rudius, captivated by her joy, offered her his portion, earning a grateful smile. As the meal drew to a close, Rudius revealed his final surprise, a reserve room at the inn. The moment was met with a mix of bashfulness and resolve from Sylphie and Roxy. Though they had discussed the possibility, the reality of the situation was both thrilling and daunting. Yet, their love for Rudius and their trust in each other outweighed their hesitation. With a shared nod, they agreed to embrace the night together. The room was warm and inviting, the air thick with anticipation. Rudius, ever the attentive lover, took great care to ensure both women felt cherished and comfortable. The night that followed was a testament to their bond, a delicate balance of passion and tenderness. For Rudius, it was the culmination of a long-held dream, a moment of unity that transcended the boundaries of his past life. As the hours passed, the three of them lay entwined, their hearts and bodies united in a harmony that words could scarcely describe. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, Rudius awoke with a profound sense of contentment. The day ahead would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but for now he basked in the afterglow of a night that had deepened his connection with Sylphie and Roxy. He was indeed a lucky man. This scene isn't just about passion, it's about trust. Sylphie's willingness to share Rudius with Roxy shows her evolution from jealous girl to secure partners. But Aerith's eventual return could shatter this balance. Chapter 9. The Party. The day had finally arrived, a day of celebration, long overdue. The Grey Rat household buzzed with quiet excitement as preparations for the surprise birthday party for Norn and Aisha reached their final stages. Rudius, ever the mastermind, had orchestrated the event with meticulous care, ensuring that every detail was perfect. The goal was not only to celebrate his sister's belated 10th birthdays, but also to bring the family closer together after the trials they had endured. To set the stage, Rudius lured Norn, Aisha, and Roxy out of the house under the guise of a casual outing. The real purpose, of course, was to give Sylphie and Lilia time to prepare the house for the festivities. The group headed to a serene spot outside the city, where a gentle stream flowed, its clear waters teeming with fish. Fishing, Rudius declared, would be the perfect family bonding activity. The scene was idyllic, the air filled with the soft sounds of flowing water and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface. Aisha, ever the eager learner, took to fishing with surprising skill, quickly catching several fish. Norn, on the other hand, struggled at first, but found guidance in Roxy, who patiently taught her the basics. The two began to bond, their initial awkwardness melting away as they shared laughter and conversation. Rudius, meanwhile, found himself embarrassingly outmatched by his younger sister, his attempts at fishing yielding only a waterlogged boot. Despite his playful protests, the day was a success, filled with light-hearted moments and growing camaraderie. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Rudius herded the group back home, their buckets filled with the day's catch. The real surprise awaited them. Upon entering the house, they were greeted with applause and warm smiles from Sylphie, Lilia, and Zenith. The dining room had been transformed, adorned with flowers, candles, and a beautifully set table. Norn and Aisha, wide-eyed and speechless, were ushered to their seats of honor. Rudius, standing at the head of the table, delivered a heartfelt speech. He spoke of the family's journey, the hardships they had faced, and the importance of moving forward together. His words were tinged with both sorrow and hope, a reminder of the father they had lost and the future they still had to build. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone. Then came the presents. Sylphie and Roxy presented Norn and Aisha with beautifully wrapped gifts, a vibrant coat for Norn and a pair of stylish boots for Aisha. The sisters' faces lit up with joy as they unwrapped their presents, their excitement palpable. Lilia and Zenith followed with their own gifts, embroidered handkerchiefs that carried a deeper meaning. For a brief moment, Zenith's expression softened, a faint smile crossing her face as she watched her daughters. It was a fleeting but profound moment, a glimmer of the mother they had once known. The celebration continued with a traditional Assurin cake, a sweet and slightly bitter sponge cake filled with dried fruit. As the family enjoyed the treat, Roxy took the opportunity to gently lecture Aisha on the importance of appreciating what she had, even if it wasn't to her taste. The moment was both humorous and touching, a reminder of the bonds that were slowly strengthening within the family. The highlight of the evening came when Sylphie presented Roxy with a gift of her own, a magician's hat, a symbol of her place in the family. Roxy, overwhelmed with emotion, accepted the gift with tears in her eyes. It was a moment of acceptance, a sign that she was truly part of the Grey Rat household. As the party drew to a close, Rudius reflected on the day's events. The laughter, the tears, the shared moments, it was all a step toward healing. The family had grown closer, and for the first time in a long while, there was a sense of hope for the future. The celebration was more than just a birthday party. It was a reaffirmation of their bond, a promise to face whatever came next together. And so, under the warm glow of candlelight, the Grey Rat family celebrated not just the passing of another year, but the strength and love that held them together. It was a night to remember, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of family. The handkerchiefs are Chekhov's gun. Will they trigger Zenith's memories? Roxy's tearful acceptance of the hat underscores her longing to belong, a thread that'll weave into future arcs. Chapter 10. Workplace Drama. The chill of winter crept steadily into the kingdom of Renoa, its icy breath heralded by the occasional flurry of snow outside the window. The season was long, harsh, and unforgiving, demanding meticulous preparation from every household. For Rudius Greyrat, however, the approaching cold was less a threat and more a call to hunker down with his beloved wives, Sylphie and Roxy, and wait out the frost in warmth and comfort. Firewood was stacked high in the backyard, and the basement brimmed with preserved food. Life was good until the past came knocking. One morning, over breakfast, Roxy presented an unexpected proposal. She and Sylphie had been tasked with escorting a member of the Renoan royal family on their coming-of-age pilgrimage, a tradition where young royals traveled the kingdom to gain wisdom and experience. The job required skilled mages, and Roxy, with her formidable reputation, had been chosen. Sylphie, ever the opportunist, had joined to forge connections with Princess Ariel, who was also accompanying the royal. Roxy, nervous about the responsibility, suggested Rudius join them. Despite his initial reluctance, he agreed, knowing his presence could ensure the mission's success. The party assembled at an upscale inn, where they met the young Renoan princess and her stern knight, Grace. Tension simmered beneath the surface, especially when the adventurers hired as additional guards arrived. Among them was Sarah, a former flame of Rudius from his adventuring days. Their history was fraught with unresolved pain. A failed romance marred by Rudius's emotional struggles and Sarah's subsequent anger. Their reunion was awkward to say the least, but the job demanded professionalism. The journey to the forest shrine was fraught with danger as monsters lurked in the shadows. Roxy's skill as a mage shone brightly, earning the respect of the initially skeptical adventurers. Rudius, though less active in combat, provided support where he could. Yet, the real challenge lay in navigating the emotional minefield between him and Sarah. Their interactions were strained, filled with unspoken words and lingering resentment. Princess Ariel, ever perceptive, orchestrated a moment for Rudius and Sarah to confront their past. Venturing into the forest to gather fruit, the two finally spoke openly. Sarah confessed her regret for how she had treated him, while Rudius admitted he had never truly loved her, using her as a means to move on from his heartbreak over Eris. The conversation was raw and honest, offering closure to both. By the end, they parted as old friends, their wounds healed, if not forgotten. The pilgrimage concluded without incident, and the party returned to Sharia. The Renoan princess and her entourage departed, leaving Rudius, Sylphie, and Roxy to reflect on the journey. Sylphie, ever the supportive wife, teased Rudius about his past with Sarah, but her confidence in their relationship remained unshaken. Roxy, too, found reassurance in Rudius's love, knowing she held a special place in his heart. As winter settled in, Rudius couldn't help but ponder the future. His thoughts drifted to Eris, the woman who had once been so special to him. If she were to return, would he break his promise to Sylphie? The question lingered unanswered as the snow began to fall. Sarah's closure is cathartic, but her presence reminds us of Rudius' past toxicity. His growth here contrasts starkly with his old self, proof that redemption is possible even for flawed souls. Chapter 11. Graduation Day. Winter had fully embraced the city of Sharia, blanketing it in a serene, icy quiet. Rudius Greyrat, now 18, found himself reflecting on the steady rhythm of his life. His research at the University of Magic was progressing well, and he had successfully completed his third year, poised to enter his fourth, His family life was equally fulfilling. Lucy, his daughter, was growing rapidly, already speaking her first words and bringing immeasurable joy to the household. Sophie, ever the devoted mother, had even taught Lucy to call her Mama, while Rudius remained Rudy for now. He didn't mind. There was plenty of time to teach her to call him Father Dearest later. The household was thriving. Norn and Aisha, Rudius's younger sisters, had taken to their roles as doting aunts with surprising maturity, the usual squabbles replaced by a shared adoration for Lucy. Even Zenith, their mother, who had been largely silent since her illness, had begun to smile more often, a subtle but heartwarming change. Roxy, now a respected faculty member at the university, was flourishing in her role, her brilliance beginning to earn her the recognition she deserved. Amidst this domestic tranquility, the university's graduation day arrived. The ceremony was a grand affair, held in a vast auditorium where the 7th-year students received their diplomas. Among the graduates were Linnea de Adoldia and Persona Adoldia, the Beast Folk princesses who had once been Rudius's rivals and later his allies. They had grown into formidable mages, their academic achievements earning them the honor of representing their graduating class. As they stood on stage receiving their diplomas, Rudius couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They'd come a long way from the wild, unruly girls he had first encountered. However, the day took an unexpected turn when Linnea and Persona approached Rudius and Nanahoshi with a request. They had decided to settle a long-standing rivalry through a duel, one that would determine who would return to the Great Forest to lead their tribe and who would forge a new path elsewhere. The stakes were high, and the duel was to be a no-holds-barred contest of strength and will. The fight that followed was nothing short of brutal. Linnea and Persona, both fiercely determined, clashed with a ferocity that left the snowy ground stained with blood. Their battle was raw and visceral, a testament to their shared history and the weight of their decisions. Rudius, acting as an impartial observer, couldn't help but marvel at their tenacity, even as he winced at the sheer violence of their struggle. In the end, Persona emerged victorious, though not without significant injuries. Linnea, battered but unbroken, accepted her defeat with a surprising grace. The two parted ways, each embarking on a new chapter of their lives. Persona would return to the Great Forest to assume her role as leader, while Linnea set out to explore the world and carve out her own destiny. As Rudius watched them go, he couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. Their journey had been tumultuous, but it had also been a testament to growth and resilience. Life, much like the seasons, was a cycle of endings and beginnings. And as the snow continued to fall, Rudius knew that his own story was far from over. There were still challenges to face, mysteries to unravel, and new horizons to explore. But for now, he was content to savor the warmth of his family and the quiet beauty of the winter around him. Their duel isn't just action. It's a metaphor for breaking free from tradition. Linnea's independence suggests she'll become a wild card ally, while Persona's leadership may reshape Beastman politics. Chapter 12, Phase 4. The air in the room was thick with anticipation as Rudius Greyrat stood before the intricate, multi-layered magic circle, the culmination of years of research and collaboration with Nanahoshi, Cliff, and Zenoba. This experiment was the next step in their quest to unlock the secrets of summoning magic. The circle, composed of over 100 sheets of meticulously inscribed paper, glowed faintly as Rudius began to channel his mana into it. The process was slow and deliberate, the circle greedily drinking in his energy as the room filled with a soft, pulsating light. Nanahoshi, ever the meticulous scientist, watched with bated breath. Her hands trembled slightly, a rare display of emotion from someone who usually maintained a stoic demeanor. Cliff and Zenoba stood nearby, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. This was no ordinary experiment. It was the culmination of their efforts to summon something from another world, a feat that had eluded them for years. As the mana flowed, the magic circle began to shift in color, cycling through hues of yellow, orange, blue, and white. The patterns were mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, and for a moment Rudius felt a pang of unease. The last time he had seen such a display of light was during the displacement incident, the event that had brought him to this world, but he pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. This was different. This was control. This was progress. With a final surge of mana, the light coalesced into a single point, and then the glow faded, leaving behind a single object at the center of the circle. It was green and black, round, and unmistakably familiar. A watermelon. Nanahoshi let out a triumphant cry, her voice breaking the silence that had gripped the room. "It worked!" she exclaimed, her face alight with joy. Cliff and Zenoba erupted into applause, their earlier apprehension replaced by jubilation. Rudius, though relieved, couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Of all the things they could have summoned, it was a watermelon. Still, it was proof that their research was on the right track. The celebration that followed was lively, if a bit unconventional. The group gathered at a local tavern, where the watermelon was sliced and shared among them. Nanahoshi, usually reserved and withdrawn, was uncharacteristically animated, her laughter ringing out as she recounted the details of the experiment. Roxy, Sophie, and Norn joined in the festivities, their presence adding a familial warmth to the occasion. Even Cliff and Elena Lee seemed to be enjoying themselves, though their interactions were more intimate than the others might have preferred. As the night wore on, the conversation turned to the next phase of their research. Nanahoshi revealed that she had been in contact with a legendary figure, Perugius, the Armored Dragon King, one of the 3 godslayers who had led humanity to victory in the Laplace War 4 centuries ago. Perugius was said to possess unparalleled knowledge of summoning magic. Nanahoshi proposed that they seek his guidance, a suggestion that was met with a mix of excitement and trepidation. For Rudius, the prospect was both thrilling and daunting. Perugius was a figure of myth, a hero whose name was spoken with reverence. To meet him, to learn from him, was an opportunity that few could even dream of. But it also raised questions. What would they gain from such a meeting? Could Perugius truly help them unlock the secrets of summoning magic? And more importantly, could he offer a solution to Zenith's condition, the lingering mystery that had haunted their family for so long? As the night drew to a close, Rudius found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the early days of his reincarnation to the challenges he had faced alongside his friends and family. Every step had been a lesson, a trial, a chance to grow. And now, with the success of their experiment and the promise of meeting Perugius, it felt as though they were on the cusp of something extraordinary. But as he looked around the room, at the faces of those he cared for most, Rudius knew that the true measure of their success wasn't in the magic they wielded or the knowledge they gained. It was in the bonds they had forged, the lives they had touched, and the future they were building together. And with that thought, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it as they always had, side by side. The watermelon is hilarious, but the real takeaway is Perugius' introduction. A living legend tied to Laplace's war, he'll unlock lore about Rudius' world and Zenith's condition. Extra chapter, Sharpening the Mad Dog's Sword. The Sword Sanctum, a place steeped in the history of countless battles, stood as a testament to the ever-shifting tides of power between the Sword God and Water God styles. Once a stronghold of the Water God, it had been claimed by the Sword God a century ago, and since then it had become a sanctuary for the strongest swordsmen of each generation. Here, amidst the biting cold and the echoes of past duels, ambitious warriors gathered to hone their skills under the tutelage of the greatest masters. Into this hallowed ground stepped 2 unlikely visitors. Riita Leah, the reigning water god, and her young protege, Rita, a woman whose unassuming appearance belied her fearsome prowess, carried herself with the ease of someone who had long since mastered the art of war. Her companion, a spirited young woman with a sword at her hip, gazed at the sanctum with a mix of awe and trepidation. This was the den of beasts she had longed to see, a place where the strongest thrived and the weak were cast aside. The sanctum, at first glance, resembled an ordinary town, yet beneath its mundane facade lay a community of swordsmen and women, each one a disciple of the sword god style. Rita and her pupil pressed on, their destination clear, the great hall where the sword god himself resided. As they approached, they were met by Nina Thalion, a young sword saint, whose sharp instincts immediately recognized the threat posed by the old woman. Rita, however, greeted her with a nostalgic smile, recalling a time when Nina had been but a child. Their meeting with Gul Thalion, the sword god, was brief but charged with unspoken tension. Rita had come at his request, though the purpose of her visit remained shrouded in mystery. It soon became clear that Gul sought her expertise to train one of his students, a fiery young woman named Eris Greyrat. Eris, with her wild eyes and untamed spirit, was a stark contrast to the disciplined practitioners of the water god style. Rita, though skeptical of Eris's suitability for her techniques, agreed to the arrangement, seeing an opportunity to test her own pupil, Isolde, against the sword god's disciples. What followed was a series of sparring matches that revealed the strengths and weaknesses of each combatant. Eris, despite her raw power and ferocity, was no match for Isolde's refined water god techniques. Yet, in turn, Isolde fell to Nina's precise and emotionless strikes. The three young women, each representing a different approach to the sword, found themselves locked in a peculiar stalemate. Eris defeated Nina defeated Isolde, and Isolde defeated Eris. As the days turned into weeks, the trio began to train together, exchanging insights and pushing each other to new heights. Eris, though initially resistant to advice, gradually opened up to the idea of refining her techniques. Nina, ever the pragmatist, sought to understand the nuances of Eris's unorthodox methods, while Isolde, the studious Water King, provided a steadying influence on both. Through their shared efforts, Eris began to temper her hostility, learning to channel her aggression more effectively. Nina, in turn, gained a deeper appreciation for the emotional undercurrents that drove her opponents, and Isolde, humbled by her defeat at Nina's hands, redoubled her efforts to master her craft. A year passed, and the balance between them shifted once more. Eris, now able to hold her own against Isolde, had grown into a formidable warrior. Yet, the true test of her strength lay not in the sanctum, but in the distant figure of the dragon god Orsted, a foe whose power dwarfed even that of the sword and water gods. For Eris, the path to victory was still long and fraught with challenges, but in the crucible of the sword sanctum, she had taken the first steps toward her ultimate goal. Eris' growth from berserker to disciplined warrior is pivotal. Her scenes tease a future showdown with Orsted, and perhaps a bittersweet reunion with Rudius. Volume 13 delivers the perfect mix of heartwarming moments and looming conflicts. Rudius' family is settling into a new rhythm, but with Zenith's fragile memories, Peroja's cryptic agenda, and Eris' inevitable return, that peace won't last for long. If this volume makes it into the enemy, expect major emotional payoffs. Roxy's wedding, Sylphie's quiet determination, and yes, the legendary watermelon summoning. The journey to Perugius begins, uncovering secrets of ancient magic, Zenith's uncertain fate, and the mysteries of summoning. But more importantly, this marks the turning point of the entire story. The next volumes bring some of the most intense, emotional, and game-changing moments in Mushoku Tensei. So stay tuned, because the real storm is just beginning.